The world does not end with a bang, but with a sudden, pressurized silence that feels heavier than any explosion. At exactly 1200 hours, the Strait of Hormuz, the most claustrophobic maritime artery on the planet, undergoes a terrifying transformation. For the crew of the $13 billion USS Gerald R. Ford, the transition is instantaneous. One moment, the Combat Information Center is a symphony of digital confidence, a glowing blue map of every bird in the sky and every bolt in the water. The next, the world turns a violent, bruised red, a screeching electronic pulse, a sound that bypasses the ears and vibrates directly into the skull, shatters the silence. This is the electronic screech, the calling card of a coordinated Russian-Iranian blackout. On the high-definition displays, the symbols for friendly destroyers and civilian tankers don't just move, they dissolve into a chaotic static known as digital snow. GPS signals, the invisible threads that tether a 100,000-ton supercarrier to reality, simply vanish. Inside the belly of the beast, the air grows cold. The Ford is the most advanced warship ever built, a system of systems designed to dominate the electromagnetic spectrum, yet it is currently blind in a room full of knives. Outside, the Russian frigate Stoikiy is executing a suicidal game of chicken, its rusted iron hull charging at 30 knots directly toward the carrier's midsection. At 1,500 feet, the two vessels are close enough for the Russian bridge crew to see the American lookouts through their binoculars. This isn't just a maneuver, it's a psychological lobotomy. Moscow is betting that the American giant, deprived of its digital eyes, will flinch. They are banking on the idea that 100,000 tons of American steel cannot navigate the narrow, jagged limestone corridors of the strait without a satellite to guide it. But as the collision alarms begin to shriek like dying animals, the Russian crew forgets one thing: the U.S. Navy was born in the dark. The digital ghost isn't helpless, it's simply changing its method of execution. By early 2026, the alliance between Moscow and Tehran has moved past cooperation and into a desperate, unshackled synergy. For Russia, the Strait of Hormuz is the perfect second front, a strategic lever to force the West to look away from the grinding attrition of the European theater. For Iran, it's about geography as a sledgehammer. They aren't just patrolling these waters, they are attempting to set up an illegal high-tech toll booth at the gate of the world's wealthiest neighborhood. Imagine a single, narrow doorway through which 20% of the world's daily oil supply must pass. If Russia and Iran can lock that gate for even 48 hours, the global energy market doesn't just fluctuate, it disintegrates. Every factory in Europe, every gas station in America, and every microchip plant in Asia is tethered to the calm waters of the Persian Gulf. This is gray zone warfare at its most lethal. By using a single, relatively small platform like the Stoikiy frigate to create a collision risk, Moscow can hide a billion-dollar geopolitical heist behind a maritime accident. If the Ford collides with Russian iron, the narrative changes from a defense of global trade to a reckless American provocation. The Kremlin's technical advisors have spent years studying the U.S. Navy's rules of engagement, looking for the specific handcuffs that prevent a supercarrier from defending itself against low-tier threats. They believe they have found the sweet spot, a situation where firing a single shot would trigger an ecological and economic apocalypse. Tehran provides the swarm, Moscow provides the electronic cloak, and together they wait for the giant to trip. They aren't trying to sink the Ford, they are trying to bankrupt the alliance that supports it. They want to prove that the system of systems is a glass cannon, brilliant in a lab, but brittle in the chaotic, heat-shimmering reality of the Gulf. 12:15 hours. The world's throat becomes a high-speed collision course. The Russian frigate Stoikiy suddenly banks, its bow cutting a jagged white scar across the deep blue water as it charges within 1,500 feet of the Ford. In naval terms, this is the equivalent of a reckless biker swerving inches from a school bus while shining a high-powered tactical flashlight directly into the driver's eyes. But Moscow isn't just using steel. They are using brute force visual execution. As the Stoikiy closes the gap, its bridge activates high-gain radar jammers, flooding the air with a wall of electromagnetic white noise. The goal is to blind the Ford's Aegis system, the most powerful radar array on Earth, by overwhelming it with so much data that it simply shuts down to protect its own sensitive electronics. The Russian commanders believe that by getting this close, they can force the American giant to make a mistake. They want the Ford to maneuver into the path of a nearby civilian tanker, or better yet, to fire its CIWS Gatling guns in a panic. Moscow is recording everything. Every radio transmission, every frantic call on the bridge, and every movement of the carrier is being beamed back to the Kremlin in real time. They are looking for the flinch. They want to show the world that the indomitable U.S. Navy can be bullied by a corvette if the bully is crazy enough to play chicken. But the Russian crew is busy gloating behind their electronic screens, believing the giant is helpless in the dark. They don't realize that the Ford isn't panicking. It's executing a maneuver called MCON Alpha. In a single coordinated heartbeat, the carrier kills itself. It shuts down every radio, every radar, and every digital pulse, transforming from a glowing beacon into an 1,100-foot ghost in the machine. While the Russians are shouting into their megaphones, the U.S. Navy has just entered a state of spectral silence. And in this silence, the American sailors are starting a digital autopsy of the enemy's very soul. The Russian crew believes that because the Ford's radar screens are blank, the Americans are blind. It is a fatal misunderstanding of 21st century warfare. Moscow brought a megaphone to a digital X-ray fight. The U.S. Navy doesn't need to shout pulses of radar energy to see. They have learned to listen to the mechanical heartbeat of the enemy. While the carrier remains electromagnetically dark, its crew activates a suite of high-definition FLIR and thermal sensors. These aren't cameras, they are spectral auditors. In the 4K clarity of the Ford's thermal displays, the Stoikiy isn't just a ship, it's a heat map of vulnerability. The Americans can see the exact temperature of the Russian engine room, the heat signature of the exhaust, and even the nervous movements of the bridge crew as they realize the giant hasn't moved an inch. This is the tactical twist that flips the board. The U.S. Navy is currently performing a spectral autopsy of the Russian fleet. Every unique vibration of the Stoikiy's turbines, every frequency hopping pattern of their jammers, and every mechanical quirk of their hull is being captured and filed away into the systems of systems cloud. While the Russians think they are winning a game of chicken, they are actually providing the Pentagon with a genetic code of their newest naval technology. The Ford isn't just surviving the encounter, it is harvesting the enemy. To the Russian pilot circling above, the carrier is a dead hunk of steel floating in the water. To the American commanders in the Combat Information Center, the Stoikiy is a transparent ghost, its secrets being sucked out of the air by passive sensors that Moscow doesn't even know are active. The giant didn't go dark because it was scared. It went dark so it could hear the enemy's heart stop. 12:30 hours. Just as the Stoikiy is playing its digital games, Tehran releases the Bees from the jagged limestone caves along the Iranian coast. 50 IRGC Zulfikar fast attack craft ignite their engines, their triple outboard motors screaming across the water at 70 knots. This is the Dragon Swarm, but they aren't charging the American fleet head-on. In a masterclass of asymmetric cruelty, the Iranian wolfpack weaves between a line of 300,000-ton civilian super supertankers. They are using the global energy supply as a living firewall. They know that the U.S. Navy's rules of engagement are built on a foundation of restraint. To fire a 5-inch shell or a harpoon missile at the swarm would mean risking a catastrophic oil spill that would incinerate the Gulf and collapse the world economy. It is the tactical equivalent of a swarm of angry hornets buzzing inside a room filled with dynamite. The giant is powerful, but he is handcuffed by his own morality. The Iranian commanders are laughing into their radios, knowing that as long as they stay within 100 yards of the tankers, they are functionally invincible. They are forcing a moral dilemma on the American commanders. Do you protect your carrier and risk an ecological funeral for the planet, or do you take the hit? High above, Moscow adds the Eagle to the equation. A T-95 Bear bomber begins circling at 35,000 feet, its long-range cruise missiles already receiving targeting data. This is the vertical squeeze. If the U.S. Navy looks up at the bomber, the bees below will sting. If they look down at the swarm, the Eagle drops its payload from the stratosphere. It is a perfect dilemma designed to shatter the American fire control network. But as the Russian pilot prepares to pull the trigger, he has no idea that he is being watched by eyes that don't need radar to kill. 1,300 hours. The strait goes pitch black as Moscow and Tehran orchestrate the ultimate digital execution, the synthetic reality attack. This isn't standard jamming. It is GPS spoofing. Russian intelligence units, working in a lethal loop with Iranian cyber warriors, perform a strategic miracle. They don't just block the American navigation network, they feed it a lie. On the tactical displays of the Ford and its Arleigh Burke destroyers, every ship in the strike group appears perfectly aligned, moving safely through the center of the channel. But in the physical world, the Fifth Fleet is being dragged by a digital hallucination toward a collision course with a massive rusted wall of steel. Inside the Combat Information Center of a destroyer, the world is ending in white noise. The screens show clear water, but the lookouts on the bridge are screaming. Through the mist, a 300,000-ton supertanker has just materialized less than 200 yards away. Collision alarms are shrieking like a dying animal, and the sailors have exactly 15 seconds to prevent an apocalypse. The Kremlin's advisors are leaning into their consoles, waiting for the accident that will frame the U.S. Navy as a reckless aggressor. But the Navy doesn't play by the enemy's map. While the GPS is telling lies, the sailors execute a digital lobotomy on their own systems. They switch to pure IRS, the inertial reference system. This is navigation based on the laws of physics, not satellites. Using ring laser gyroscopes that track the very rotation of the planet and the pull of gravity, the system of systems bypasses the digital fog entirely. The destroyer performs a bone-jarring emergency bank, its 100,000 horsepower engine screaming as it misses the tanker by a mere 50 feet. Moscow brought a hallucination to a fight against gravity, and they just found out that you can't spoof the weight of 9,000 tons of American steel. 1,400 hours. The tension in the strait has reached the absolute threshold of kinetic war. Washington has declared DEFCON 2, and the final ultimatum is being broadcast on every open frequency. Retreat now or face strategic erasure. Tehran and Moscow believe the U.S. is bluffing. They think an aircraft carrier is too valuable to risk in such a narrow bottleneck. They think they have cornered the giant. They're about to find out that the giant has been standing in their shadow for 72 hours. Suddenly, the deep blue water, exactly halfway between the Iranian coast and the Ford, begins to boil. A massive 560-foot-long black hole tears through the surface, shedding millions of gallons of brine. This is the USS Michigan, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine. Normally, these vessels are ghosts, designed never to be seen until the world has already ended. But today, it is performing a psychological lobotomy. By surfacing in the middle of the world's most dangerous choke point, the U.S. Navy has just told the IRGC leadership that their unbeatable swarm was being watched from below the entire time. The Michigan isn't just a submarine, it is a floating arsenal carrying 154 Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles. Each one is currently receiving a final fire control solution for the Iranian missile cities hidden deep within the limestone cliffs. This is the God-eye moment. The realization that while you were trying to jam the sky, a digital ghost was already holding a knife to your throat from the deep. The hunters have just realized they are trapped in a titanium slaughterhouse, and the U.S. Navy is simply waiting for a reason to pull the trigger. 14:30 a.m. The tension finally snaps, not with the roar of missiles, but with the chilling silence of a total strategic collapse. Realizing that every layer of their mission, the spoofing, the swarm, and the vertical squeeze, has been systematically dismantled by American integration, the Kremlin and Tehran order an immediate climb down. A rattled Russian voice announces the successful conclusion of planned regional exercises. They are attempting to hide their humiliation behind a diplomatic mask, but the world has already seen who owns the theater. The Stoikiy and the Zulfikar boats turn 180 degrees and limp back toward their ports like defeated men stepping away from a gallows. The U.S. Navy doesn't chase. We don't need a massive explosion to claim a total victory. The real prize for the Pentagon isn't the sight of burning scrap metal, it's the petabytes of data harvested by the Ford sensors. During this 180-minute standoff, the U.S. Navy performed a spectral audit of the Russian-Iranian alliance, capturing every secret frequency and every mechanical DNA signature of their entire fleet. While this engagement serves as a chillingly realistic simulation, the tactical dominance displayed is the absolute reality of 21st century warfare. The U.S. Navy doesn't just train with targets, we train with data. The ice-cold precision of our cloud-based architecture is the invisible wall that ensures your gas prices stay stable while our adversaries remain trapped in 20th century logic. If you are proud of the silent warriors who guard our interests while the rest of the world sleeps, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a high-stakes mission. Go Navy!